Welcome back to 21 Boom, and this is Coach Feeney, and I'm bringing you Tuesday evening the guided meditation series. So I will be your guide for the evening, and when you're ready to, we're gonna sit or be as ever you want to be comfortable here, however you feel comfortable, and try to connect with your experience all at once in a flash. You can close your eyes if that feels right for you, and just feel the body as a cloud of sensation. Don't give any scope to distraction. Be entirely present and notice that however you feel, whether you're tired or uncomfortable, consciousness itself is already vividly aware of what's already appearing on its own. See if you can relinquish the shape of your body. Notice that you don't feel hands or shoulders or feet. There's just a cloud of sensation, individual points of pressure, tingling, heat or cold, vibration. And the moment you notice that thought is present, look for the thinker of that thought. Is there anyone that the thought is occurring to or coming from? What is thinking? And then rest as the open space in which the thought itself unwinds and disappears. Listen to the sounds in the room and notice how each one articulates this space of consciousness. Consciousness is simply the space in which everything is appearing on its own. So rest is that. Now become aware of the sensation of breathing. And for the rest of this session, we're going to focus exclusively on the breath, trying to train attention in a very precise way on a single object. And to facilitate this, you might actually count your breath silently in your mind. Simply think the number 1 on the inhalation and the number 1 on the exhalation. And then 2, using the mental label as a way of anchoring attention more closely to the felt experience of breathing. And you can make your voice and your mind very subtle, but have the label cover the full duration of each part of the breath. If you'd rather not count, you can use the mental labels of in and out to cover the inhalation and the exhalation. And again, make the word as long as the breath. If you're counting, you can start again at 1 every time you lose track of the breath. See if you can catch the breath the moment it appears and follow it without missing anything. But also see if you can do this without making a strenuous effort. Simply receive the breath in the space of open awareness. There's nothing to lean toward or to struggle to get closer to. The breath, along with every other sensation, is already fully appearing in the space of consciousness. However indistinct it might seem, as precisely the way it is in that moment. In the moment you notice you're lost in thought, come back to the raw sensation of breathing. Come back without judgment, without contraction, without despair or frustration. This is the practice, simply noticing distraction and coming back to clear seeing. So there's nothing to regret. That is the moment of real practice, simply coming back. In the last minute of the session, simply begin again. But recognizing and practicing in this way, you are expressing an intention for yourself, an intention to be happier and to be better placed to make others happier, an intention to suffer less and to be in a better position to help others suffer less. The goal here is wisdom, the wisdom that comes from recognizing how things already are in each moment and stepping out of the fantasy life born of having a mind that's perpetually distracted. So in this final minutes, just remember what an enormous expression of goodwill for yourself and for the world this practice is. See if you can receive each breath as though you've never done this before. You've never noticed a breath before. Sometimes it's going to focus on a specific object like the breath as a way of making the practice more precise. It's possible when you're keeping your awareness wide open and choiceless to drift into places where you're not paying the clearest attention. Your mindfulness is not that bright. It's good to alternate between these two styles of practice, precision and focus on the one hand and effortless openness on the other. In the end, they're actually unified, but it can seem quite distinct in the beginning. So I'll be emphasizing one or the other by turns. So it's often speculated that the sense of self and other are related, but the literature on this is pretty confusing, frankly. In neuroscience and psychology, the sense of other, the sense that we're in relationship to other minds, is often summarized by the concept of what's called theory of mind, in which we form some understanding of the beliefs and intentions of other people, and we do this fairly early. We don't do it reliably until the age of 4 or so. It certainly happens in stages earlier than that, but as far as the capacity to really understand that people have goals and intentions and beliefs that can diverge from ours, that takes a while to develop. And until about 4, people don't reliably show it in all its forms. And of course, this becomes the cognitive basis for empathy. And a condition like autism is generally described as a massive deficit in this area, in being about to form a theory of mind. And there are a few other terms that people have used to describe this faculty. It's been called mentalizing and mind sight and mind reading. And Daniel Dennett called it the intentional stance. But clearly, this ability to recognize and interpret the mental activity of other people is essential for normal cognition and social development. But the problem with linking this to the feeling of being a self is that we can form an understanding of the beliefs and intentions of other people without feeling like a self at all. In fact, some of our least self-conscious experiences are those we have when we're actually acutely aware of the mental events of others. Just think of what it's like to be totally engrossed by a film. You're sitting in a darkened room with other people, but if you're really into the movie, you tend to forget that. You certainly forget that you're just staring at a light on the wall, and you become completely immersed in the mental and emotional lives of the people you see on screen. And the most unusual thing about watching a movie is that you can stare into a person's eyes without being implicated yourself. This is not a circumstance we ever encounter in life, where you can watch a person's facial display of emotion and intention. You can listen to what them speak, you can see them act, and there's absolutely no possibility of being seen yourself. And I think this is one clue as to why watching film and video is so captivating for us. It's a kind of hack of our psychology, right? It is a totally novel experience in evolutionary terms. Just think of how strange it is to be able to look more closely at the faces of these people than you ever can, even at uh, with those people that whom you are deeply intimate, and there is no chance you'll be seen. But the crucial thing to realize here is that this is an experience where you are all the while forming a theory of mind about them. Your understanding their behavior and emotion is precisely the same term that you understand the behavior and emotions of people out in the world. So theory of mind is intact, and yet this is a circumstance where most of us lose our sense of self to a remarkable degree. You really are effaced when you are watching a film and captivated by it. So the connection between the sense of self and the sense of other can't be found where many psychologists and neuroscientists put it, but it can be found at a different point. It emerges when we recognize that other people are or can be aware of us, where we understand ourselves to be an object in the world for others. And I think this is a far more primitive sense in which we have a theory of mind, and I tend to call this fundamental theory of mind. Now, the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre actually seemed to have understood this, and he claimed our encounters with other people constituted a kind of primal circumstance of self-formation. And he had a great analogy in his book, Being and Nothingness, where he described the human condition as being one in which we're all perpetually in the position of a voyeur who is standing outside the window of the object of its lust, who then hears the sound of someone stepping up behind him. And again, we are continually thrust out of the safety and seclusion of pure subjectivity by the understanding that we've become objects in the world for others. And I think in this sense, self and other really are two sides of the same coin in the point of view of this practice of meditation. Looking for the self and failing to find it is a circumstance in which this connection can be tested, and it becomes quite vivid when you're in relationship to another person. If you're talking to someone, right? And they're looking you in the eyes, and you follow the direction of their gaze back to where you presume yourself to be, and you fail to find yourself in the decisive way that Douglas Harding alludes to in his description of having no head. You recognize that you're headless, that the only head you see is that of the other person. This experience, however brief it might be in the beginning, of feeling no longer implicated, no longer on the receiving end of the other person's gaze, it is not an experience in which you have lost the normal theory of mind. You can still understand what the other person is saying and doing and how they feel. Nothing there has changed, and yet on some basic level, only the world remains in those moments. And then when this feeling of self comes back, it reemerges as a kind of contraction, as a kind of collapse of your own attention. And here Sartre's analogy seems very adept. Something comes up from behind you, in a sense, and the practice of mindfulness at that point is a matter of continually cutting through with this identification we have with the pattern of recoil and collapse that we experience in those moments. Be sensitive to what it feels like when you become self-conscious in the presence of another person. This feeling all of a sudden that your face is a problem. What has happened? What has made you somehow unable to merely see the other person in a totally uncomplicated way? What's your problem when you're self-conscious? And where is all that appearing? Mindfulness can become a kind of tool to untie that knot that you call I, the knot of self. Thank you for choosing to, I guess, tune in, and I'll be back here next week.